Score, the podcast, the only show taking you inside the studios of the world's most celebrated composers and musical storytellers. Presented by Vienna Symphonic Library. Here are your hosts, Kenny Holmes and Matt Schrader.
What's going on, guys? I'm Kenny Holmes.
I'm Matt Schrader.
This is Score, the podcast, presented by Vienna Symphonic Library. This is extra special, Matt.
Our new offices.
We're sitting here inside A24's headquarters in West Hollywood. Our guest today is kind of the man of the hour. Maybe the front runner for the Best Original Score Oscar.
He's been
nominated for pretty much every award and won several. We're talking about Daniel Blumberg, composer of The Brutalist, an incredible film, an incredible feat, 3.5 hours long. Probably the first movie in a while we've seen with an intermission.
First intermission in quite a while, and comes from a very different background musically. So really excited to speak with him. Yeah,
so he's going to join us here in just a bit. But before we get to him, we want to remind you about our terrific sponsor. Daniel's going to be playing some stuff on a little MIDI keyboard that we have using one of their software libraries. We're talking about Vienna Symphonic Library. And they've got some new stuff, Matt.
Yeah, they just released an update of their all-in-one orchestra, the Synchron Smart Orchestra 2.0, which is entry-level, but it also gives you quick access, live playing, sketching, quick orchestrations, hybrid scoring, the user interface, this thing called Flow View, which makes this very simple, regardless of your skill level with some of this stuff.
And it's super interactive too. You can go two-handed. You can play the full orchestra with one hand and solo instruments with the other hand. So you can really utilize, being one person and trying to build out an orchestra. If you're just getting started and you don't have all the power that maybe someone like Daniel Blumberg has, or the financial abilities as well. When you don't have that budget, it makes a big difference.
Quick, powerful orchestrations with strings, brass, woodwinds, percussion, choir. It includes smart spheres and smart hits, featuring modern electronic and organic textures, FX, and sound design elements. The cool thing is this is available for a promo price of $209.
But that's the regular price. We have a special promo code for you. Now, this episode's going to live on, but the promo code is good until...
But wait, there's more.
Yeah, it's good for a while. So till March 17th, we're going to give you a promo code SCORESMART10. You get 10% off when you check out. Just go to vsl.co.at, and you can get that package among many others. The piano stuff that you'll hear right here on the show. There's the full orchestra packages. And on the website, you can download demos of these things. Check out the videos on how to use them. They're really intuitive. I am not a composer, and I can use them. So that just goes to show you how easy it is. But if you're just getting started or you're a working composer, musician, you want these packages, and VSL is becoming the go-to for a lot of these software packages. Aside from the fact that they have the Synchron stage in Vienna, where so many of the biggest films are being scored right now and recorded. And, who knows, maybe someday you build something up on the VSL packages and you could be right on the Synchron stage recording.
100%. Yeah.
So use that promo code before it expires. It expires March 17th. But let's get to it. Here inside A24, we're going to welcome in the Brutalist composer, Daniel Blumberg.
You approve? You approve of the keyboard?
Yeah.
All right, good.
I brought my keyboard. I started working with Mona, Brady's partner, and straight after the sound mix to The Brutalist, I went to New York with my keyboard, and when I got off the plane, it was broken.
Oh, no.
So I was like, I need to look into these little...
It's pretty little, yeah.
They're fragile. We have a separate case for that. It looks like we're coming in with a briefcase full of money or something because it's so light, but you don't want to break it. This is a treat. I don't think we've ever had a view like this on the show here. We're really excited to have Daniel Blumberg here with us in West Hollywood at A24, talking about the biggest movie. We're coming up on the Oscars. We're talking about Best Picture. We're talking about Best Director nominations and original score. walk us through what it's been like for you in the last couple of months. I mean, this is probably pretty crazy.
Or I mean, even the last 8 or 9 months, it sounds like, since you finished up.
Well, I started working with Brady's partner straight after the sound mix. And so I was sort of just went straight into her film, which is a musical.
Oh, cool.
So it's been quite nice to it's very intense, that process with making a musical, because you have to do all the music before they go on set.
Yeah.
And now I'm in post-production with her. So that's sort of been happening at the same time as...
That's keeping you plenty occupied.
Yeah, I think
creatively.
For Mona as well, it's the same, because she wrote The Brutalist with Brady, and so it's like this combination of making work and reflecting on work.
Mm-hmm.
How do you stay focused with, I mean, you've got this crazy press madness going on. You're traveling all over the world with this film, but you also made a dedication to another film that you're working hard on. How do you balance that?
Well, I think when we were making The Brutalist, we were just thinking about sort of making it as good as it could be. And we definitely weren't expecting, I guess with Brady, he wants it to have a cinematic release, basically. That's his sort of aim. So,
and cinematic meaning like big theatrical.
Just for it to get for him to make the film how he wants, and then for it to be in cinemas.
Yes, yeah.
That's like his dream. So it was amazing in Venice when people really enjoyed the work, and it's had this sort of wider audience than we imagined. And that's definitely not something I take for granted at all. Just, I have friends and collaborators that make extraordinary work that, sometimes isn't very visible, or you'll see films that come out and they're not in the cinemas for long or stuff. So it's really
shorter
nice.
And shorter. Yeah.
Yeah.
The amount of time something can even be in a theater.
But yeah, this has definitely been nice that people have wanted to speak about it. And
it's a great film. Yeah.
And I like how you said people received it well at Venice. It won the Silver Lion. It's like the big prize.
Yeah.
You're being very modest about how much they liked it.
Yeah. No, that was really nice. I was in Budapest with Mona, and we watched Brady getting the Silver Lion in a little bar in Budapest with his mum. And
that's cool.
That's amazing. Let's take it back a little bit. You meeting Brady, or maybe even let's go a little bit before that. What is your musical background? How did you come into the fray with Brady?
I met him when he was putting together his first film, Childhood of a Leader. And yeah, it was just one of those occasions where you just click just immediately. We had dinner, and then I took him to this venue near where I live in London called Cafe Oto.
Famous.
It's a small venue. I mean, there's about, I think the capacity is about 150.
Mm-hmm.
But really special program.
It's quite an artistic hub.
Yeah, well, I think all of the musicians on the Brutalist, pretty much in some way I've met through that venue. Mm-hmm. Not Vince Clarke. He's like a label buddy, because I've been releasing records on mute. I started going there when I was 22. Otto, a friend took me to that venue, and I saw improvised music for the first time, and it changed my life.
Do you remember what it was?
Yeah, it was an artist, a Japanese seminal artist called Keiji Haino. And it was a solo concert that he did. And my friend Onyu took me there, who still works there.
Okay, cool.
Were you already involved in music, or was this how you jumped into music?
I was. Before that, I was in bands, which I didn't enjoy. But
Really?
I was young. It was like 15 to 22. And when you're growing and sort of learning about what art you want to make, or trying things out.
That's probably a great primer, though, for a lot of the instruments that you end up now dealing with a lot more.
Well, I think I got into it when I started writing songs when I was 15, and that immediately became professional. And I think one of the things with the scores that I appreciate is with melodies, themes. It's quite similar to writing top line for songs.
Mm-hmm.
So, and think in a way, I was sort of talking about the Brutalist, the idea of sort of repetitive themes coming in, similar to like a song when a chorus comes in. We've talked about choruses, Brady and I, since we met. Mm-hmm. This idea that that rewarding feeling when the chorus hits, and how long. One thing we always talked about was how long you can sustain the tension before you get that.
I mean, that opening of the Brutalist, I think, it's
a perfect example. Yeah, the ship.
Because there is that tension that builds, which I'm sure that's all crafted. But did that come into fold at all in that opening? Probably for the pacing, because I think much of that opening was shot to some of your at least early music, if it wasn't complete yet.
Yeah, it was shot to the demo. Yeah.
Okay.
Should I talk over it or?
Yeah, absolutely.
I was wondering if the track.
We'll try not to be too distracting.
No, it's not. It's it's nice actually. No, this was. I started working with Brady on the film immediately. He sent me the script when it was finished and started talking about it. And in pre-production, this was one of the scenes that he wanted to. He said that he wanted to shoot ideally to music. So it was a demo that had a similar structure to this, with the sort of metronomic percussion.
It's like a pulsing build, and then that big horn. I get goosebumps every time I hear the horn section.
Yeah, no, that was. I mean, the initial horn section, the sort of siren sounding stuff, that came from Steve Single, the sound mixer. When he did his first pass of the mix, it had all these sirens. So I started getting all the brass players to.
That's
I
cool.
just said, "Can you play sirens?"
Bring some musicality to it, yeah.
Yeah, well, it was always this dialogue between the sound and the music, as much as possible. And on the set, for this scene, they shot to the demo, so all the music was spilling into everyone's microphones, so they had to actually rebuild the sound from scratch. But yeah, I was sitting on the ship. I had a little keyboard, a bit like this. And it's really, for me, being on the set is very useful. Besides the practicalities of when we actually had shot to live music or had to hide microphones around the set, just being present when Brady's kind of, I mean, one thing that I like is him talking to the actors, and you really get some clues about what the sort of temperature of the scene is going to be. But all of this information is really great for me to bring into these sessions that I have with the musicians later. And then, of course, the mixing it all with Pete. Yeah, it's like you get little clues, harnessing your instincts to know what's right or not.
I want to ask a little bit about some of the creative side of that, but I'm also curious about when this began, because I think this was correct me if I'm wrong, I think this is a project that started during COVID times or was interrupted by part of COVID. And maybe that was more when Brady was still working on some of it. But I understand, were you living in the same apartment complex or the same unit, or there was something, you were living very close to Brady, I think, as he was developing some of this, right? Because you're longtime friends.
Yeah, I mean, we've shared many beds and cuddles together over the years. But Yeah, but when Brady, I was doing Mona's last film, The World to Come, and that premiered at Venice Film Festival during COVID, and Brady had had this idea of shooting in Venice during COVID on 35mm. He set up all this sort of crew. Everyone was just doing it as a favor because he wanted to make this clip to try and convince people to fund the film, basically. So that was the first piece of music that I worked on for the film. But it was great because he could shoot in Venice and there wasn't lots of sort of people walking around on their phones and stuff, which he would have had to have removed. So he used those shots for the 80s.
Okay, yeah.
When the film flips to the 80s. And it was actually different music that I made for that initially. But that was sort of the start of it. And then it just kept getting delayed because of COVID. And I was very careful not to read the script again until he went into pre-production. And then, because that's when you know it's kind of going to happen. Even though it was kind of potentially falling through every week of the production.
Of course, yeah.
No, Brady, I had a room in Brady's apartment. So he had a bedroom there and I had a bedroom there. And then sometimes we
cuddle.
Yeah. But in the opening, it was really good because just shooting to music on set is quite a big commitment. The first, can you hear that?
Yeah, I think that's out on the street.
Is that the score?
Well,
the sirens? No.
I speak to Pete about this a lot, who mixed it with me, and because we're walking around. He was showing me this video. He was walking home the other night, and there was just a drip going into, like, hitting this metal sort of grid grating or something, and he was just like confused because it sounded like the Brutalist.
Oh, really?
Well, we were constantly sort of thinking what could work and stuff, and you just get so absorbed in it that, yeah.
So now these kind of weird textures, you just get
I was like, yeah. But the first scene, he wanted to shoot the jazz scene live on set, so I had to get a band together, and that was the first day of shooting.
Oh, it was? Okay.
Yeah, and I had this theme. Yeah. That was the one that we used for the construction scene at the end. And the idea was that they'd go into this like jazz bar and get really high, and it would sort of, the music would stick with him for his whole life.
I thought that scene was a lesson in film music, because it starts off and you're just at a jazz club, but then as the drugs start hitting him, it starts getting kind of warped and out of sync and a little crazy, and it made me feel really uncomfortable in my seat. When you have a live band playing like that, are you writing stuff like that, or are you telling them what is happening in the scene and just letting them do their thing as a jazz section?
Well, it's very specific musicians. The double bassist is Joel Grip, and the drum from, he's Swedish, but he lives in Berlin. And Antonin Gerbel, and he lives in Paris, on drums. And the sax player is Pierre Borel from Marseille. And then the pianist is, see here, now they're kind of breaking out of their...
We're getting high now.
Exactly. But this sound is more, Pierre's really coming away from the melody. Simon on the piano is sort of playing the... Oh, I'm ruining it. See, I'm ruining it. It's like... See, it's live, so...
All of this was live?
Yeah, and they're playing. The idea is that these are people that I know can play the jazz.
Yeah.
But also, I kind of more know this side of their practice of improvised music. Simon, the pianist, played mostly tuba actually on it.
So then talk to me about doing some of that stuff live, because there's huge challenges if you're needing to sync that with picture, especially if there's changes to the edit, which I'm sure there always are some. How do you deal with that? How do you keep the kind of authenticity of it, doing things live and still meet the demands of kind of hitting the cuts and the pacing and all of those other things?
Well, first of all, I mean, so just back to the musicians. I mean, so I play in a quartet with Joel and Antonin and a singer called Elvin Brandy. So we play a lot together. And Pierre Borel plays a lot with Seymour, who I work with a lot. You know, it's this sort of, we know each other.
Yep.
And that gives it quite a good short. I mean, we went to a studio the day before. They came to Budapest. And we went to found this sort of room, basically. And it was quite quick. I showed them what I wanted it to work with. And then we talked about the era. And then they just tried something. I showed them the images of the VistaVision, because they were using this, camera that has... from the 50s, and it has this in-camera effect that stretches the light across the frame in quite a specific way. So I used that as an example of how it was going to kind of start to stretch. And then it depends what session I'm doing, but in something like that, it's better just to start playing and then stop and maybe have some feedback.
But so much of that sounds like it's coming from a improvisational side, where you're like there's a little bit of creative room to explore or to try something new or to stumble into something that might be crazy or it might work.
Yeah, I mean, the idea for that was that you would feel like something's happening. If you write out music, I can't write music. I can't. Not theoretically kind of trained, but besides from that, it's just no one knows what's going to happen. The musicians don't know what's going to happen. But so we did a day before the shoot together, and then actually Brady had thought, the whole production had thought the room sounded really shit, like on set. But when I went and checked it out, it sounded amazing. So we actually spent most of the night trying to find a piano that didn't have all of its guts taken out. The musicians managed to find one to borrow in Budapest. And then we had a situation where it was full acoustic music. And when Adrian and Isaac came to the set, they were coming to like a live gig, basically. So, and Lowell as well. He could move the camera to the music, and Brady had foreseen that it was going to be. We talked about it being live, so it was all shot with the idea of it being, being able to cut towards it, cut to it,
kind of fluid. This movie is really unique when watching it, and it seems like a really fun one for a composer. Not only because of the length, because there's a lot of runway to make decisions on where to put score, but also there's some big moments. You don't really see an opening credits package like you have in this film, where you have a runway to write something that isn't reflective of characters on the screen. There's also a lot of transitional moments where you're, point of view of cars driving on a road, or wide landscape shots of artwork and buildings. I'm just wondering, from your perspective, was this unique to have that much space to just write?
Well, I think the whole thing, I was very aware that it was sort of something that I wanted to give every part of me to. Brady's a very close friend of mine. We've been through a lot, creatively, emotionally. So there's that. And then just that kind of responsibility as a friend, and knowing it was such an important work for him. Then just, I'd just really thought it was beautiful, the script, and I like films about making films. Like I always liked Truffaut, Fassbinder, all of them made these amazing films about making films, and I thought, yeah, this is Brady's one. But then I think, and I was just aware that it was a very special moment in terms of just creatively, that we were so aligned, and we have been for many years. There was, and I love speaking to him about music, and he loves music. So that space that you're saying for a composer to come in, and that's something that comes from Brady really, because it's his work. But he likes music kind of either on or off. He doesn't like sort of, a bit of background
wallpaper. Yeah,
right.
Yeah, but there is definitely. I mean, one of the scenes, we've literally got a jazz bit playing on the radio. We kind of mix the diegetic.
Yes.
But yeah.
There was a scene where there is some gargling that's being done in the film. Did you record that?
No, so that was really amazing because all of the licensed music, that's from Brady.
Okay.
I'd be a very bad music supervisor, or like.
I was curious whether that was part of the sound.
We were going to ask you to gargle for us, but now that ruins.
I guess no live performance then. Fine.
But that's one of the song. That was something that Brady was excited about, how that would interface with my music.
Yes.
And I was like, when I remember hearing it the first time, I was like, "What? Who's doing that then? Who have you got? Who have you gone and got?" But I think it's quite a famous song he was using quite a lot of music from the era.
Yes. Yeah.
I mean, that's quite helpful in kind of.
So, I mean, when you talk about working with Brady and some of the early music discussions, one of the unique things about this film in the present day that we're in is it has an intermission, a pretty lengthy intermission. Was that always part of the plan? What were your thoughts when you kind of discovered that we need, I mean, I forget how long exactly it is, 12 minutes, 15 minutes?
Yeah.
Is it 15?
I think it's 15.
Yeah, you're right. You were wrong. No, actually, the music's technically a bit shorter. It's like 13.
Okay. So I'm a little bit closer.
Yeah. I think that both of your responses probably had merit in their own ways. And also, I'm not even sure if it was. I can't even remember how long it was.
Yeah.
So maybe we.
But I mean, that is
maybe all of us.
That's a unique thing in a film nowadays, and it has kind of its own unique function. I'm curious kind of what the emotional needs were that you felt that needed to convey, because it is kind of a natural stopping point in the story. But it's also kind of the completion of the first arc, the first kind of act of the film. So what was your approach to the intermission? Was that something you pitched Brady, or did he kind of give you free rein to say, what do you think is appropriate here?
No, the intermission was in the script from the start. When I first read the script, it's nice because I've read Brady's previous two films before he started, like very early on, and some of the musical notes that he writes, it's almost like he's sending me a text message or something. It's sort of quite, I'm reading it with him sort of, saying this is maybe referring to music that he's heard me make or something. It's quite,
but it's a note for
direct. It feels like that, yeah. And then when I saw Intermission, I was like, oh, thanks, because it's a really nice idea to.
Yeah.
I mean, I make music, records, and half the time that people are just putting on Spotify and while they're doing the washing up or something. But it's nice with cinema because you're sitting in the seats, everything's dark, and then
it's important,
and then it's on a relatively loud system, so it's quite an exposed thing. The intermission was really interesting. We just spoke about it from the start, this idea that it would also be a cut in that experience for the viewer, because some people go to the toilet, or you can hear people talking about the film, and so all of this stuff came into what it was going to be, and incremental ideas throughout the, you know, we actually landed on the final idea quite late in the process. It just sort of arrived, and it was, I said to Brady, I think we got the intermission, and we listened to it together, and it was like, yeah.
It sounds like you're sketching, like you just put a recorder out. You can hear almost like pencils being set down. Was this like a really raw recording? What?
Basically, there was a few things that the intermission does. When I was writing in his apartment in Budapest, I had this theme. Basically that. I mean, it's a. And I was trying to work out where it could go, and because I don't write music, I was sort of like. You know, and he heard me doing this, and actually through the wall, and said, "Oh, that's perfect." Like this idea of hearing someone working something out, this quality, and he used this recording I had of me doing that.
Oh, cool!
It was like my dictaphone, just on the piano, on the keyboard, so you could hear kind of noises like, or like me breathing.
It wasn't a clean digital record. It was like a microphone. You could hear the room.
Well, this was for temp.
Okay.
But the pianist that I ended up working with, who I also sort of had in mind from the start, was John Tilbury, who's just one of the most extraordinary artists of like the 20th century. He's like incredible. We were so happy that he agreed to do it. He's amazing. And the intermission is him, but because of that quality that we liked about the dictaphone recordings, I actually put a microphone on him. So there's two mics on it was recorded in his garden studio, which it's got a plastic roof. So when it rains, you can just hear it raining. You can hear like birds walking on the top. And yeah, I had a room mic and then two mics on the piano, and then one mic on him, and you could hear him touching the piano. And in the case of the intermission, he's writing notes on his stave. You can hear him scribbling and like moving in his chair like this. And he's actually, what I captured was him trying to work out this theme that I'd written for Ezra Bet. So it's like, that's the Laszlo's theme, and then it goes, you know, and then this romantic music. It like develops into this. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's almost like a shout out to the musicianship of the score to do it that way instead of making it the clean recording of just a piano cue or something. I really appreciated it when I heard it.
Yeah, you hear, I mean, for me, that's that's my favorite cue. And you do hear the clean one as soon as the second half starts. You hear that, which I'm playing.
Because that's kind of when they're reunited.
Yeah, when they're reunited. But you hear that theme emerging, like in the intermission, and then you hear it, and it's kind of more boring. I mean,
but you're secretly laying a little bit of that momentum, building a little of that anticipation in the intermission, which is cool.
Yeah, it's kind of the idea was the quality of that John's sort of solo playing was sort of in line with Laszlo's artistic journey throughout the film.
Yep. Yeah.
I wanted to ask you about the train explosion scene. It's a big moment. What went into the discussions about that cue, and how did you land on what you landed on?
A set like that, they're really using every single second as carefully as possible to sort of actually get it shot. And so I had to go and sort of go through the prayer with extras who didn't speak English, And then I wanted Adrian and everyone singing this key, because it was for the, we talked about that prayer turning into score for this explosion that happens afterwards. But it's a very important prayer. I actually called my rabbi before, the rabbi I had when I was growing up. I still think of him as my rabbi.
Yeah.
He's a really amazing guy, actually. I kind of just wanted to talk to him, but it's such an important prayer that I sort of wanted to know, just get some, it's always a bit nerve-wracking with something that important. You don't want to sort of mess anything up.
Did he share anything meaningful?
No, I think in the end, to be honest, there were so many different rabbis on the set. It was absolute chaos. They were all arguing about like the pronunciation. One person said this is modern Hebrew. This one said, oh, it's Sephardi. It's like, it was very funny. See, I had to get them singing that Jewish tune in A minor. I think it's A minor. But I needed it to go into the key. Yeah, this one. See, because they're banging their chests, and the idea was that those bangs would become the percussion. This like percussion, that's Steve Noble in his kitchen in London. That squeak was Sophie Annual on the piano, and that kind of, that's Sophie. That's Steve.
You seem to be really into keeping the raw elements in the score.
Like the music.
Like just sounds that happen that maybe some people would take out.
Yeah, I mean, the world that we interview so many people in that are doing the new Transformers film or, whatever it is. But it's so much more focused on kind of refining something down to the simplicity of something. And so many of those raw things don't end up being part of a finished idea. Even if maybe at some point they end up being kind of stripped down and no, this needs to be more traditional and it needs to be more, orchestra and a lot of that. But the really kind of striking thing about this is it's so densely layered with textures and what some people would call imperfections, but it's integrated into the music.
Yeah, I guess I can't speak for. I don't have that much experience with film scores in terms of listening to film. I've always been like big fan of films, but not a massive listener to the scores. But yeah, in terms of texture and imperfections, the idea was, with this film, in general, I record acoustic music and work with people who improvise.
Yep.
So sometimes, and it's microseconds of stuff that Sophie's doing in this cue. She's just adjusting something and it sounds live. It sounds alive.
Yeah, it does.
And that's something that Brady likes about my music or Sophie Annual's music. That's what I like about Sophie's music. That's why I invited her to play on it. Obviously, it's like very, that cue's kind of constructed because, as in like I've written something, the actual melody is quite fixed. It's just, yeah. And I had to do it in this key. There's a certain key that everyone had to be, the singer, that Adrian had to sing the prayer on set in that key. So there's these limitations, but then you're trying to find spaces where still events can take place within the music. And in this case, it's maybe like more on the sonic side of things. I mean, Steve Noble, who was doing those rhythmic things, he actually had most of the track kind of mixed when he did those. He was like the last element. And then it's a big part of something like this is working with Peter Walsh, who's, I think, one of the greatest. Well, for me, he's the greatest. That's why I work with him. But he's just an incredible mixing engineer. Like getting all those sounds working, because it's one thing kind of. There's a lot of Sophie's piano was recorded in Paris. Mm-hmm. Steve's drums were recorded in his kitchen in Bloomsbury in London. Wow. And then the brass was recorded in Berlin. Bit of brass from Marseille, like Simon did something. And how to bring those sessions and make them make sense musically.
Were there things you encountered that just were too difficult? They were too different. They were too hard to combine into something that maybe you needed to redo or approach a little bit differently?
Not in that. I had a portable mic recording setup. So my recorder was about this big. What's that? 15 centimeters or something. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it's very high quality preamps made in Switzerland by a brand called Sonosax. Mm-hmm. And they make a lot of classical music. It's kind of more been adopted by classical music in classical music recording or on film sets as well, actually, because it's very precise. It sort of sounds the dynamics are you capture what's there. Yeah. And then the microphones I use are these U89s, Neumanns, that have it's actually similar in the sense that it's used a lot in classical music and film ADR and stuff because it's so flat. It doesn't add character. It captures want to capture the instruments and these amazing players. But the consistency of that technical setup is useful because you're kind of getting stems at, I'm miking up one tuba in the same way that I'm miking up the other tubas, like perspective wise and stuff like that. So all of those things are taken into account. And then, in terms of mixing, it was absolutely crazy mixing this score because it was 2 hours of music. And all of this whole project was really tight in terms of budget and time, because time costs a lot of money for these productions. So I think, I'm quite used to sort of extending my days and not sleeping and stuff. But
I wanted to ask you about that real quick because Brady's been very forthright about, even on, I think, the Golden Globes, he talked about, how hard it was to make this movie, the concept of, the world we live in now, 45 minutes, people lose their attention span. It's hard to convince someone to sit down and watch a 3.5-hour movie.
I was told that this film was undistributable. I was told that no one would come out and see it. I was told the film wouldn't work.
Obviously, this worked, and it's amazing. What was the length of the first cut of the film? If it ended at 3:30?
I can't remember, but he didn't take any notes from anyone. And people were trying to make it an hour shorter, basically.
Oh, yeah.
But he didn't have any, he only takes notes in terms of like people he invites to understand if the character's arc is correctly. But that's one of the reasons why I work with him, because I'm working with him. I'm not working with some like random people in an office in like, I don't know, wherever. I'm literally just working with him. So I only take notes from him.
Is it just you two? There's not a producer or somebody else who's sitting in some of those conversations?
No way. Okay. No way. And that's why it sounds like this, and that's why people like the film.
It's awesome.
And he has to engage with producers sometimes, but I don't. And I work with Pete for the mix and Steve Single for his mix. But no, I actually don't even know what the music editor, music supervisor is. I'm sort of trying to find out, in just having been asked to do a few more films now. I'm quite curious to see how it actually works, because we built our own way of, I mean, obviously within the post-production schedule, but this was sort of, we built our own way of working that we felt would make the best work. So kind of curious about how
I picked that up
done.
a lot from the approach, is that something feels very, very organic in the way that this was constructed. The needs of what the story calls for. It wasn't necessarily being, here's the way that you need to approach the music. It sounds like it was the other way around, where there was an idea that you could kind of help grow into things that the film needed. But I'm curious about now, coming into so much award attention that this film has received, including the music. The music is phenomenal in a million different ways and stands out. But I think you're probably the youngest of the nominees in that category. I know film composing is not something that you have done maybe a lot of, probably not as much as some of the other nominees. What does it feel like for you now to be in LA, doing interviews with people about your film, and knowing that, in a matter of days from now, you could be winning potentially an Oscar or any number of other awards?
I think there's a poster outside my hotel of Wallace and Gromit, and I keep bumping into the creator of Wallace and Gromit and the director as well.
Yeah.
In the hotel and stuff. Like every few hours, I'm just with the Wallace and Gromit people, and they're from Bristol, which is just crazy because I watched it with my grandma at the end of last year. It came out on TV, and she liked it. She's in her 90s, and then my cousins have kids, and they were watching it. It was all these people. That's amazing. And he had the Wallace and Gromit little plasticine character. Well, they're not plasticine. They're actually more erotic. Yeah. That's
That's
very,
been the standout so far of award season.
That's
No.
your Hollywood moment.
yeah, I actually, I've been seeing him for like the last few weeks, or months, the last couple of months. And then yesterday I was like, do you think I can have a picture with you? With the puppets.
Yeah. Wallace and Gromit.
Yeah, but I know that when I get back to the hotel, I'm going to see him. I'm really looking forward to it. But that's really amazing because that's amazing. And then,
So
yeah.
Oscar or not, you're happy with the Wallace and Gromit photo, is what you're saying.
That's the moment. Yeah. That's what this is all
He
about.
can head home now, honestly.
yeah.
It's peaked.
Yeah, I'm retiring now. No, but he said that I can go to the factory.
Nice.
So I've got my goddaughter's 6, and she likes Shaun the Sheep, so I'm going to take her.
That's perfect.
Yeah, it'll be amazing.
I wanted to ask you about the Quarry, and you went out there and recorded a gunshot sound and manipulated it to use some saxophones. Or can you walk us through that?
Yeah. What were you doing?
So he shot in Carrera, where they extract marble, and I couldn't go on the shoot because they were just using. It was a very small team, just practically bringing that massive camera into a quarry.
Yeah.
But then when I saw the images, I really wanted to hear what it sounded like. And we'd talked about Evan Parker, this amazing soprano saxophone player, playing in that cue. Yeah, someone that Brady's always listened to. And I think it was the first time I'd worked with Evan. I've known him for a while, but quite impractical to bring him to the Quarry. I recorded him in Kent in this kind of quite strange office space. It had nice acoustics. But I wanted the sound of that Quarry.
Kind of reflective surfaces.
Yeah, I just saw, you know how sound just, when you're in sort of a room, and you normally have problems with sort of sound going back. This just looked amazing because it had all these kind of slabs of marble, and I was just so curious about the echo, the reverb. So I went there with the same recorder and the same microphones. I just had to Google. I knew that you could do this. You can kind of record, it's called an impulse response. Mm-hmm. You sometimes do it in studios where you send a sine wave into the studio and then you record the response of the wave, and then you can use it. I'll try and explain. I mean,
it's how they calibrate a lot of rooms.
Exactly, yeah. So I was working with an artist, a fine artist called Lydia Rochman, and we sort of did a show. She had a show in Milan that we used this reverb for, but we sort of combined and these two things. But essentially, we went to the Quarry and recorded a gunshot. And the response of that gunshot in the Quarry in very high quality, high fidelity. And then I took that back to the studio in London. I say studio, it's just my flat. And basically made an algorithm. So you take the gunshot out, and then you take out the response of the gunshot and then put the saxophone in.
Oh, okay.
So you put the saxophone instead of the gunshot, and then it kind of calculates what it would be. Mm-hmm. So basically, it essentially is the saxophone was in Carrera.
Yeah, reverbing with the same dynamics.
Yeah, like bouncing around.
It feels like, though, with the technology that we have, you probably could have made something like that without going out to that Quarry. But why was it so important for you? Like, the audience isn't going to know, that reverb is from the Quarry in a scientific way that Daniel went there. Why was it important for you to just go there and do it instead of figuring out a way to do it from home with computers?
For a number of reasons. I get very paranoid about reverbs, just in general. Like, I'm always find it very weird that when we're mixing and stuff, we're all the idea of putting like stuff in the same space. Mm-hmm. So if I'm doing a score or like a record and someone else is doing a record on the other side of the world, we're putting it in the same room, like with these plugins. So in general, I try and avoid using effects and stuff. I mean, there's no effects. There are reverb. There is reverb on the score, and reverb and EQ, basically. But we don't use effects. That's the thing. Then just in general, I was just sort of really obsessed with getting to the end of the project, and knowing that I'd done everything possible to make it as good as it could possibly be. And not getting to the end and saying, oh, I wish I'd tried that. And then I was working with Lydia, who's just amazing at kind of doing strange things. Her work's a lot about that. So that was a encouragement to do that as well. But I think in general, the whole score, I was trying to push myself as hard as possible to come out at the end, and also Brady trusted me with it. He had Scott Walker did his first two films, so he wants his music to be good.
Yep.
But yeah, I really tapped out of life for a year and a half, completely to do this, and sort of I knew I was coming back to a mess, so I thought at least
get a little trip out of it too. Huh?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, I had too many trips because I was doing sessions in Marseille, right. Berlin, and.
Is there anything that you did not do that you think about? Man, I wish I would have. Or did you get it all out?
No, everything. I'm sure in. Oh no, actually, no, there's nothing.
You
It-
feel
it was-
you
it
go
was
to
a-
sleep good at night when you listen to the score. There's nothing like that one part.
Well, I don't go to sleep good, but no, I definitely know that I tried everything. You know, there was no put everything into it. Yeah, all of my money, everything. Yeah.
You mentioned Scott Walker coming into a role that Scott had worked with Brady before this in many ways, and I'm curious how that history, maybe, or just Brady's kind of familiarity with an approach. I believe you knew Scott as well, correct?
I only knew Scott through Brady because
Okay.
he invited me to the sessions for it was the brass sessions for his first film and the string sessions for his second film.
Okay.
And I met Peter Walsh on the first, when I went to Scott's session.
Mm-hmm.
It was Peter Walsh and Scott sitting in the control room, and I was sitting in front of them with Brady and just heard Pete working with Scott and thought that would be someone that I would be able to work with very well. And I was right. I mean, we've done 3 records together since, and this is our second film.
And part of this, I know, the film is dedicated to Scott, but also musically, it sounded like there was an effort made to give a little bit of an homage, maybe. I don't know if that's the right word, but to Scott in some of the music. I was curious whether that was something conscious or subconscious.
No, I definitely wasn't. Definitely wasn't the case with the music, but
Okay.
But I do. Scott is an artist that I really respect and love. I love his work. Someone that, there's sort of not many people who make songs that I'm really. Gedalia Tazates as well. He's someone who died a few years ago. He's like massive. I have like massive respect for, and the dedication was from Brady because they were like very close artistically, and you know they worked together for a long time.
Yeah.
But he's definitely someone that I really admire.
Before we let you go, we have a little thing that we call 3 things. We just close out just 3 kind of quick hitter questions. The first one cue in the Brutalist that was particularly hard to crack.
I definitely know there's a good answer to this. Well, in general, I think that
There's a lot of cues.
something like the library, where it's really sensitive, and it's sort of mostly solo piano, and you just really want it to feel played like a live performance. Those things technically are very tricky to accomplish in film, because you're really it's really about the scene, and you have very specific time constraints in terms of like the scene is 2 minutes and 54 seconds and 36 milliseconds.
Mm-hmm.
So I think in general, creating music that feels alive within those limitations is really tricky. Yeah.
One musician or composer who changed the way that you think about or approach your own music?
Well,
It doesn't have to be specific to film.
Yeah, I think Gedalia Tazates was definitely someone that's changed stuff.
How so?
Just I think he opened up some possibility. Like when I really got into, he's got this record called Diasporas, which is I recommend. Just inspiring really, and his use of like his voice and stuff. John Tilbury is definitely someone that is inspiring to me. Most of the musicians, Axel Dorner, who played trumpet as well.
Yeah, it seems like you rounded up all of your influences.
Quite a few, probably.
To play with you.
Yeah, well, I just ask if who I think's the most would be the best, really. And yeah, those are the people. I don't think anyone that I didn't ask anyone who sort of said I don't want to do it, so that was lucky.
Feels like it might be easier for you to make those calls now after this score.
Maybe, maybe not. It depends. You know, it depends if someone. Sophie Annual liked the film. I was really, you know, it's a bit nerve-wracking because these are very sort of specific artists in their own right, and they have their own, you know, Sophie Annual's got an amazing record coming out in March, and that is like her life's work, you know, these records. And the idea of asking someone to contribute to something that essentially they can't really have control over the mix, and because it's just such a huge project for me and Pete to mix, so I can't have like notes from 20 musicians.
Yeah.
But they're very non-compromising artists, and artists in their own right, like Brady, making their work. So yeah, no, I never would take it for granted that someone would want to work with me. And I think also it's not necessarily on the radar of like film press is not something that necessarily people pay attention to.
Yep.
That I work with.
Yep.
Not as a general thing, but for example, I never sort of learnt about cinema through. I had a friend who used to recommend me DVDs, and then I had like a film shop near where I lived, which had a library I'd go and rent DVDs from. And then this cinema in Brick Lane has a program that, and then I got Criterion. But you have this sort of journey of like how I get film recommendations, and it's quite new to me to sort of hear about films that are coming out and stuff now. Mm-hmm. I think that's inevitable because you end up watching all the old ones, so you want to watch the new ones too. I'm watching Nickel Boys tomorrow.
Oh, I've heard that's great. I haven't seen it yet, but
no, I met the director a few times, and he's someone that just makes you want to. I've not seen his work, but I imagine he's going to make some amazing films.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You mentioned that you don't have a big background of listening to film scores, but is there a film score that you were impacted by or that left an impact on you?
Yeah, Naked Island. But yeah, I don't know how to say his name. It's a Japanese name.
For what is it just something from your childhood? How did it impact you?
I love the film, and it's and the music's just amazing. It's just this theme, like just repeated over and over again. It's so beautiful. Yeah, that's definitely one where I listen to it. But I've been asked what my favorite film scores are and stuff because of the press for this film, and I really found it quite interesting that I'd never really thought, even last month I hadn't thought of that. So I was going through films that I thought I could talk about, and there's like these kind of obvious ones like Shadows by Cassavetes has like a score by Mingus, and that's like, or like Art Ensemble of Chicago did a film score, but that's like music that I'd listened to.
Yeah.
But then I was thinking of stuff like Berlin and Alexanderplatz by Fassbinder, his TV series. And I was like, wow, the music was amazing in that. So I tried to find it. I'd never thought of listening to it out of context. But I actually realized that the reason why the music was so memorable to me was because I had the DVD, you know, the menu of the DVD.
Mm-hmm.
It just like has a loop, like playing over and over
Same
again.
30 seconds.
If you fall asleep watching it or something, it just
Yes,
plays.
and that's like 13 episodes. You know, it's 13 hours long, or so I just think that maybe that loop was just playing over and over again for like 2 weeks or something. Yeah.
I want to try one other angle on this. If you're sitting at the Academy Awards and your name is called as a winner, what is that moment gonna feel like for you? Are you gonna be anxious to go up and give a speech? Do you know what you would say?
Well, the thing about the thing that's been quite in general, you know, we've been doing like Q&As and stuff, and I think they're interesting. Like, I'm going to go to the Nickel Boys one tomorrow, which will be, I've heard Ramel speak and he's really eloquent, and I'm really curious to hear him speak in that situation. So I like the idea of them. But initially I found it really nerve-wracking to talk in front of an audience, which was, I'd done it a bit because I do drawings as well, and sometimes in a fine art context they have these kind of panels where they talk, but it's very weird for me, and it's funny because I can sing in front of people, you know, when I do concerts and stuff I sing in front of an audience, but talking in front of an audience, I just it was very weird, but I've got a bit more comfortable at it.
Will you bring a piece of paper up there with a speech written though, or if you win it, or would you just wing it?
I don't know. I'm not thinking about all that stuff.
The clock's ticking, man.
He's thinking about Wallace and Gromit.
Yeah.
No, that's great.
Well, Daniel, we can't thank you enough. I know you got a lot going on, and it was really cool to be here at the headquarters of A24. Never been here before either. So
Yeah, neither have I. It's really nice.
Cool view.
What a treat. Thanks to our sponsor, Vienna Symphonic Library. Daniel was playing the Steinway package on the Synchron piano there. Love it. Go check out The Brutalist if you haven't seen it. It's worth your time.
Great film.
The Intermission, stay for the music or listen to it on the score. And I know you have a vinyl release coming out too, they just announced.
Yeah.
That's exciting.
Yeah, double vinyl.
That's awesome.
We really spent a while trying to make it fit on 20 minutes aside. We had to cut it a bit.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's always tricky.
But it sounds good. We mastered it at Abbey Road as well, which was really nice. I think it's going to sound nice on vinyl. But that was literally just for Brady, in terms of like, he's got a really nice vinyl setup now. And I was at his house the end of last year and we were just lying in his bed listening to his vinyl player. So I was really trying to, I was with him when he got the vinyl for his first film, The Childhood of a Leader.
Oh, cool.
And how excited he was. So I was just, that's really what that is for, but you can buy it as well.
That's amazing.
Well, dude, we're rooting for you. Hope to see you up on that stage. And we can't thank you enough for joining us here on Score the Podcast, man.
That's the grand finale.
Yeah. No, thanks so much for having me. Appreciate it.
For more, including bonus footage from inside Composer Studios, follow Score the Podcast on YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, and X.
This season of Score the Podcast is presented by Vienna Symphonic Library, used by many of the composers featured right here on the show.
If you're looking for high-quality, sample-based virtual instruments to elevate your craft or unlock the creative potential of your music, Vienna Symphonic Library has the tools you need all in one place with the Synchron Series.
Recorded on Stage A of the Vienna Synchron Stage, the Synchron Series features every orchestral instrument, pianos, choir, so much more, while innovating to create an intuitive, fully customizable software suite that puts you in control of everything you create.
These are real instruments recorded and engineered by the same people recording scores for some of your favorite films and TV shows: Netflix, Disney, Marvel, Lucasfilm, Amazon, HBO, so many more.
And with their flagship Synchron duality strings, you get both the large ensemble on Stage A and the small ensemble on the drier Stage B, performing simultaneously so you can blend to create your very own unique sound. Our listeners are using it. Our guests on the show are using it. Matt and I are even using it.
We're using it too. The best of Vienna, the city of music at your fingertips. You want to hear what VSL can do? Listen after this message for a demo of Alan Silvestri's Forrest Gump theme. It sounds so good, YouTube probably copyright flagged it.
And that's all I got to say about that. Or check out the items yourself at vsl.co.at. Check out their sample player, free libraries and demos. You can play around with all that stuff right now today.
From all of us, thank you to the awesome team at Vienna Symphonic Library and Vienna Synchron Stage for supporting this season of Score the Podcast.
No, it's so cool. Was that all right? I was.
That was
it was like,
perfect. Yeah, that was awesome.
I sort of was so much more comfortable doing that than all the other interviews I've done.
Well,
so I
we
suddenly
appreciate
thought,
that.
is this
Good.
going really like? Is this all right?